Hey, Kate, how are you doing?
Jamal, man, it's awesome to catch up with you.
I know. I've been waiting and waiting and waiting and looking forward to see your face because I just love hanging out with you, period. Like, for whatever reason, I just am happy to spend time with you.
Well, I think we both have a checkered or interesting, might be better to say, past. And we've traveled a lot of places and done some similar things and some other things that are just
Yes.
darn interesting. So we connect that way.
Yeah, it's always fun talking to you because it's always like this aha crazy moment or weird moment or funny moment because you're hilarious. So I am so glad you're here. And of course, I know a lot about you, having now gotten to know you a little bit and become your friend. But I want to make sure everybody knows everything about you because, man, I did a write up about you. I did think I did a profile for you during what was it, International Women's Week,
Yeah.
and so I went and like looked at some of your awards and your websites and all that stuff, and I was like, well, geez, I thought I already knew she was like, a star, at least, yeah, a star. And but man, I just didn't realize how much you had done. So give us a little bit of flavor, taste of Kate Delaney.
I think a lot of people now think of me as the sports person because it took 500 rejections for me to finally get a gig in sports. So I talk a lot about having that tenacity, and that got me on stages, and I started to speak a lot about it. But I flew with the Dallas Cowboys, I covered the Giants, the Raiders, and I'm still on the bench for CBS. So I still do talk shows for them, filling in for some of their heavy hitters. But of course, now the sports world is, hey, do you want to watch some old ping pong? Or let's look at Tiger Woods last year when he won the Masters. So
Right.
it's either creating your own sporting event or looking at something else that's happened. Like what's been really tremendous is The Last Dance on ESPN about Michael Jordan. And that was in the very
Yes.
beginning of my career. And I had the chance to watch MJ a bunch of times, and man, unbelievable that vertical leap he had. So it's kind of fun to revisit that. But that was a chunk of my career. When I went to school, I was a content news junkie. So I became an anchor person, and that's how it started. I grew up in Philly, went to school in Ohio, and then I packed my clubs in my bag, Jamal, hoping for a better game and a better gig every single time. And I lived in a lot of different places, from California to New Mexico to, Texas to Nebraska, all over the place. Wherever I could get that next level up, I was always looking to grow, for sure. And that's a big chunk of what I do. And then executive coaching. So I became a COO of a broadcast company while I was doing the talent side too. And I learned a lot about advertising, running a company, getting the numbers up and getting the people to stay and getting the right people in place. That was so important. And that led me to, peer advisory groups and building those and doing masterminds. And I think there's so much power in that. And it's all about connection. So I realized my word is connection, and probably always has been.
Yeah, but let's see. So, you're also as accomplished as you are, and I will say this is totally true because I've gotten to spend time with you. You're very humble, so you left a whole lot off. Um, you know, but like you've written books, you've got, like all kinds of stuff about marketing and PR. Like you run your own business. I mean, like you're like a walking powerhouse. Like you've got a million things going on, and you are like the hub of all these spokes that are all somewhat connected, but they're all going a little bit of a different direction, and you're kind of making it all happen. I admire that about you because you manage multiple things at the same time.
Thanks for saying that. Yeah, the authoring the books was really fun, and I did self-published a couple of books, and then Forbes came to me and they wanted to do my business book. They wanted to do my story, and so that turned out to be wonderful. Working with them and getting on stages because of that, because people wanted to read, well, how did you do that? What can I learn? What can I learn from successful athletes and business people? And then, like you said, media, because media marketing and PR, I think there's so much junk out there and people dump money down rabbit holes, that I started to see that happening to my friends. So I built a media company. So you're right about that. And I'm the juggler.
Right. Well, right. Like, I mean, the best media PR people I know are the folks that actually worked in the business. There's a bunch of folks that have always been on the other side trying to pitch and, publicize and promote. And then there are a few folks who have either like been anchors or reporters or, have, broadcasts or have this experience where they actually have been on the other side. So they know like what folks want to hear. They know what the content, what people are looking for and all that kind of stuff. And you've got both of those experiences. So I know you're successful at that. But all right. So, and you're in Dallas.
I am. I'm in Dallas, and I've been in Dallas now for, I guess, about 15 years. Yeah.
So that other city in Texas.
That's right. Is there a rivalry there? I'm not sure. They're very different. If you look at Austin, if you look at Texas, I think what's interesting about Texas is, I say, because I've lived in all three places, New Yorkers, Texans, and Californians all have one thing in common, Jamal. They think they live in the best place on the planet, right, and nothing else is as good. And those three states are big states, and their cities, right, are all very diverse and have a different personality. It's crazy. And that's definitely Texas.
Well, that's the beauty of living in Texas, especially. Like, it's one of the reasons, I mean, I like Austin because Austin's kind of weird and crazy, and so am I. But, within a couple of hours, I can go, Houston or Dallas or, really easily down to San Antonio or down to the coast or wherever I want to go. And you can have completely different experiences without ever having left the state.
Yeah, I think that too. That's what I liked a lot about Texas. You said at San Antonio, you go there, it's about the river walk and the flavor of how it was built. And Austin is weird, and the music scene is incredible. And you kind of get your drink on 6th Street, hook 'em horns. It's all about that. You might see Matthew McConaughey, who knows, in his drive,
rolling around in his big old longhorn car.
Yeah, so
it is a really nice place to live. And yeah, I like Dallas just fine, but I'm more of a let's go visit Dallas. We have an office in Dallas, and I go up there every once in a while. But yeah, like I could be up there a lot more, but I like it down here.
Cool. Austin is weird.
So,
you need the t-shirt.
Tell me what you've been up to lately. What's exciting? What's kind of getting your juices flowing, if anything? Because I know you got something going on. What's exciting in Kate?
It's so funny. I'll have friends that'll call me, Jamal, and they'll say, what are you doing? Hey, I started painting walls, and we've hired a contractor to do this. And I'll be like, where are you finding the time? Since the pandemic has hit, it's been nonstop for me because so many people have reached out for help in media, in what they're doing. Yes. I'm showing people how to leverage what they're not leveraging enough. And I call it refocusing, reimagining, and reinventing, because no matter what you do, whoever's listening to this, in some piece of what you do is going to be different. The world is going to be different, no matter how much you may wish for it to go back to what it was. In most cases, almost every single business, I feel comfortable saying probably 98% of businesses are going to have to make some sort of a change. And it can be a positive change, because this is the time for creativity. This is the time for innovation. And along those same lines, I know that you're involved in something that I'm involved in, and that's how we met. And I was so excited about it because I believe in the power of, like I said, masterminds or really peer advisory groups where you can find some of that information, I'll call it, in real time, in real world, through people who have lived it. And when you have other people elevating you, I think there's nothing like that. In my career, I saw that happen. I saw it happen when I was involved in a group, and I so believe in it. So I, threw my hat into the ring for Vistage and went out to San Diego, did their academy, and I'm building a group much like you are. And I'm very excited about that because I love to see people grow. I love to see people leave the fixed mindset and open up their mind and watch and see where they can move or take their lives and their businesses. So it's a perfect fit.
Well, speaking of that, maybe we could dig into this a little bit because, again, you're so hilarious. And I just think the way that this conversation will go with you is probably going to be the most fun, because I haven't really dug into the academy experience with anybody else that went to academy with us. But man, talk about, watching the power of peer group and watching people grow, right? I mean, we came in that academy and none of us had ever met each other, had no clue about each other, were probably even a little bit, I don't know about you, at the beginning. And we walked out of there like the closest of friends. And it was really because of all of the work that we did that made each of us grow in our own unique ways. And one of my favorite memories, I don't know what your favorite is, but one of my favorite memories is Ralph. When Ralph, who is a very successful, now retired businessman up in Canada, says, one of the things we're talking about in the group and how we need to, as we are training to be chairs, helping people be comfortable with vulnerability, and something that we all had to become comfortable with, because you can't teach somebody what you don't know. And Ralph says, well, I just don't know how to be vulnerable. And I forget who says it. I don't know if it was Haley or you or somebody says, my friend, you just did it, because you just admitted you don't know how to do something. That's vulnerability. And he was like, and you could just, you hear Oprah talk about that aha moment. You could see it on his face when he's like,
Yeah.
oh, I get this. Like, to watch him go from a guy who was like, I can't be vulnerable, I don't know how to be vulnerable, to admit that he doesn't know how to be vulnerable. Then, like, we got to the end and some of the work that we did, some of those writings that we did and the speeches that we gave to each other. I mean, his was like hella vulnerable, like vulnerable to the max. I don't know what to call it, but it's like at the end of the experience, just to watch people grow. Like, that was one of my favorite moments, to see him go from all the way over here to all the way over there. And the recipe, the secret sauce, was the other people in the room. It wasn't some, magic drink. It wasn't a formula. There was no rubric or paradigm. It was just, we spent time showing who we really are, and that gave him permission to show who he really was.
Yeah, I think that it was so incredible to watch that with really everyone in that room. And I think that's why we grew so much closer, because, we were in the ring together, in the arena. And if you weren't, then you wouldn't have gotten that connection, because you wouldn't have been vulnerable and been your true self. I mean, everybody has things they are, that it's funny, because we're wearing masks and I say, okay, wear your mask, but take your mask off, because
right.
The more you keep the mask on, it affects business. It affects personal relationships. If you really want to connect for better relationships and bigger business, you have to, I believe, especially now and moving forward, it's going to be so significant. You have to be vulnerable. You have to be able to be a little bit vulnerable. And some of the biggest icons that we have in the world and in the United States, you're seeing it, they're really showing their vulnerability. And I think that's a good thing, because that's going to be a key tool that you need, I believe, moving forward to succeed, because we don't have time for fake. We don't have time for meeting each other's representatives. And in business, do you really want to meet anyone's representatives? I would venture to say, and you were a lawyer and you still are. So, when you're a lawyer, you meet a lot of representatives. And I was an interviewer and still am. And I've met a lot of people who I can tell right away they're not being real.
Yep. And the thing is, particularly after becoming more experienced and seasoned in your craft, we can spot them. Like, I can sit there and I'm like, okay, well, whenever you decide you're going to show up, let me know. Because right now I'm watching a TV show and you're putting on an act, and I'm just waiting on the real actual character to show up, because I can tell that you're not being real. You're not being authentic. Because I've spent all my life, I spent 20 years dealing with people's representatives and being somebody's representative. So I think that's absolutely right. Like, getting people comfortable with a vulnerability and authenticity is really how you actually build a real relationship. Everything else, if you're not being vulnerable and being authentic, you're not really having a relationship. Relationship starts with real. And if it's not real, then it's not a relationship. You're having a transaction. You might be having an interaction. You might be even having an experience, but you're not having a relationship until you actually show up as who you really are, because they don't know who you're dealing with.
Yeah. And I think the tolerance for that is going to shrink. Whereas maybe it wasn't that way before. You know, I mean, think of, if we go back, you think of the 90s and you think of being suited up and, the first time you went into court and, what were you doing? And before that, even when you were in law school, doing mock trials and, game up, game time. But there's going to be an even greater, I think, need for people to be vulnerable, and people are going to crave authenticity, because you can see that when you look at YouTube, when you look at people who are doing well in the virtual world, since we've had to flip over to that. The people that are really connecting are the ones that are just out there and they're being who they are. And it's kind of like you go to the grocery store and you used to see those cheeseball-y magazine stars without makeup. Well, now everybody's without makeup. I don't have my makeup on. I do have some lipstick because, darn it, I paid so much for it and now it's just in a drawer since I'm wearing a mask. So I showed up with some lipstick for you. But really, we are all looking a little bit different.
Well, you're beautiful just the way you are. So I appreciate that. Hey, I don't know if you ever had one of these stories, because speaking about vulnerability and authenticity and whatever. So when I was practicing law, the first 10 years of my career, I was a patent litigator. And I was not an engineer. So, and there's this whole, every time I say to people like, oh my, I didn't know you were like an engineer too. And I'm like, no engineer. I was a psych major undergrad. And while that technically counts as science, it really isn't, and so most of my peers in my firm, and almost all people I ever went up against, they were engineers and also lawyers. And I litigated everything from engine cases to semiconductor cases, the iPhone, the first generation iPhone, all that stuff. And I had a huge chip on my shoulder because I was not an engineer, and I used to always feel like I had to prove that I was smart. And the way I would do that is that I would spend all these extra hours, like looking at the patents, color coding, all the different devices, how things work, trying to figure out how it worked, because the basic level of engineering knowledge, I didn't have that. So like a lot of the words on the paper meant nothing to me. And I'd be like, okay, I see these words, hydraulically actuated, electronically controlled fuel injection system. Well, if you're a mechanical engineer, that means something to you. But to me, okay, what does it mean to be actuated and hydraulically controlled? I don't know. But I drew all these pictures and color coded all these things. And for a while I was pissed, because I'm like, I have to work so hard to try to keep up with these people. But then as I got a little bit more senior, they started sending me to court. And the beautiful thing about being a patent litigator is that even though I wasn't an engineer, the judges aren't engineers either, and neither are the juries. 9 times out of 10, there's maybe one engineer if you're lucky on the jury. So they're all in the exact same spot I was, trying to figure out these cases. And all of a sudden I became a star and I became successful. I had judges like, they'd be like, can you please send Mr. Edwards back? Because I would go in there and say, hey judge, let me explain to you how this little fuel injector thing works. Well, this little thingy here, it pops up and the fluid comes in. And then this little green thing here, it lets it down. And this little round ball here, it pops up and then more goes down. And then this other little ball comes down. And then like this whole yellow stuff down here is where it's spraying it all out, and the judge would be like, oh, I get it. So the very thing that I thought made me weak turned out to be the very thing that made me strong eventually. And that was when I first, as a lawyer, realized okay, there is no such thing as real weakness. Like every little thing that you're afraid of, that you're unwilling to hide, that you're trying to cover up for, because that was, at the time, that was my cover up. I was like, I'm doing this after hours. I'm not billing clients. I'm staying here late, 2 or 3 in the morning, just so that I could show up at these meetings and actually intelligently converse with my colleagues. And I just felt like it was a weakness for me. It was always going to be a weakness for me. It was going to drive me out of that practice. But it turned out to be a big strength for me, because I could go into any court in front of any jury and I could communicate with them in ways that the folks that had that experience couldn't, because they would go right to, well, it's hydraulically actuated, judge. It's like, well, only thing I know about hydraulics is on a car. Are you talking about those gangster movies where the car pumps up? The judges, what does it mean to them? So I think, just this whole idea of getting comfortable, with who you are and even your weaknesses, and being willing to say, hey, yeah, I don't get this, dig into it and use it and turn it into a strength. I think that's a huge, huge thing that a lot of us have to work on. I don't think a lot of people are doing that.
I don't think so either. I love, love, love your example, because that is being vulnerable, because you put all those hours in it. And what if you didn't? If you said, well, I don't know that, that's not my strength, whatever. And then it turned out to be a strength. I think sometimes what you think is a weakness, and you gave the great illustration of it, it turns out to be a strength. I have just a quick little story of similar to that.
Please, I want to hear it.
Please, where I get out of school and I just want to be on camera. And I grew up in Philly, you know, so I'm not going to be in the third market. I'm not going to become the anchor, no matter how cute I look, no matter how good my voice is. No way. I mean, it was the land of pros. But I did get a job where, because I went into a bureau in New Jersey and I asked them for some copy so I could read some copy. And the anchor there was like, who are you? And took me under her wing. And I started going out with them on these big time shoots. I went to this Louis Farrakhan throwdown thing, and I got some video of me and him. I'm serious. And then I'd
love to see
America,
that.
and I'm like 20 years old, and they're flopping me in front of the camera. So now I got this big time Philly video, and they just took a shine to me. So they helped put it together. Then, of course, I'm so green, I'm sending out these tapes everywhere. But what would happen, Jamal, is they would want you to be a one-man band. So you had to know how to shoot video. You had to have the big camera, or actually it was little then, but still it was this camera, how you did everything. You were doing it yourself. And I didn't know how to do that. So guess what? I did exactly what you did. I just figured it out, and I just fudged enough that I thought, if somebody hires me, I am going to do this. So I went to Kearney, Nebraska, not just kind of knowing how to shoot. And then I ended up, you know, becoming an anchor, getting a huge job for them because I was on camera, and then moving up along the way. But if I had said, oh, no, I can't shoot, I can't do that, then I would have never gotten that break, you know?
I love it. I think it's Les Browne has a saying. I think he says something like, he says, leap and learn how to fly on your way down, which is how the birds do it. You know, first birds hop out of nest, they don't actually know that they know how to fly.
Right.
But somewhere between hopping out of that nest and hitting that pavement, they realize they got these wings and they flap them until they fly. I mean, it's just kind of how they figure how to fly. There's no bird flying school, and they don't come out of the nest immediately knowing how to fly. So as they say, fake it till you make it. Like, you get enough and then you get that opportunity, and then you just work your ass off and you just do the best you can. I mean,
that is it. That's
like,
totally
isn't that the recipe for success? Like, getting an opportunity and then working your ass off to make sure you succeed. I mean, I don't really know any other way.
I don't either. And I think that especially women, and I, you know, as a speaker, I would get hired to do this a lot, and I would talk about this a lot, that it's really true when you look at the studies. If you don't have everything, like you don't have everything an application requires, but you have 8 things that they need, most men will just dive in. And most women, not all, but most women will hold back because they think, no, I don't have all the qualifications. So I think that idea of dotting the I's, throw that out the window. We are in the land of flexibility right now. So you're allowed to make mistakes. You're allowed to be vulnerable. You're allowed to learn as you go, as long as you have the chops, as long as you have the grit. And I think that's what people are looking for, grit.
Yeah. Speaking of that, and this is one thing I really wanted to ask you about, because you have been successful in what appears, and I don't think I'm seeing it incorrectly, to be a very male-dominated industry. I mean, sports. I'm a guy, you know, and most of the folks that I know that really are into sports, either playing them, watching them, or talking about them, all of my life have been men. There have been maybe a few women that pop up every once in a while, but predominantly men. Yet you can go roll with the big guys and talk about every sport, because I've heard you do it. What's that like for you, and how did you get to the point where you as a woman didn't feel intimidated to be like, hey, I'm Kate Delaney, I'm a sports broadcaster, and I want to talk to you about the NFL?
I know what happened is, when I was growing up, I wanted to be around my grandfather, and he was a big sports fan. So I would watch some football games with him, and my uncle played pro hockey for the Philadelphia Flyers. So I saw that, and I liked the excitement of the competition and knowing who the players were and going down to the locker room. And I'd meet these, I mean, as a little girl, I'd meet these giant players with their sticks, and they'd hand me a stick or whatever. And I was in this big arena in Philly. And there was something about that impressed upon me how much I liked that thrill of the champion and what they did off the ice or off the field, and then how they got there, because I went through championships with my uncle, watching my uncle do it, and that left a really big mark on me. And I was always interested in sports. I wasn't a tomboy, really. I mean, I played tennis, but I wasn't really a tomboy per se, but I just knew a lot.
Me too. Singles or doubles?
I played singles and doubles, but really singles. And I loved it. And I think part of that was that competition, watching the home team, getting into it, going to games, and being able to hang with guys. And that's how I got my first break, really, because one of the guys, I worked in California in the Central Coast, and one of the guys wanted off to get engaged to his beautiful girlfriend, and they didn't have anyone to fill in. And he's like, you know what, you could do it. You know more about sports than I do. I'm going to beg the news director to let you do it. And he really had to beg him, like, well, why should this woman do it? And he said, because she knows sports, she'll be great. And then that's when I really turned the corner, because John Wellahan, his name was, gave me that confidence, and I did it. And I loved the emotion, the excitement of doing it, because before that I'd be on live shots with people who got shot. You know, I'd be waiting for what they called the body bag to come out. I knew the cops and the courts and the lawyers, and I was doing a lot of that hard news stuff, but I had this personality where I was more about the fun and the joking and the whatever, so that the sports came out of me more. But what was surprising to me is, because I think I've never heard the word can't in my life, Jamal, is that it was so hard for me to finally get a break, that guys always supported me. The audience did, men that were trying to help me get breaks, but they weren't the gatekeepers. And I think the gatekeepers thought no woman is going to be able to get ratings and hold hold an audience's attention that way, especially when I flipped to radio. And I wasn't just doing reports, because now it's you're the show, you're hours of radio time where anybody can ask you, anything. And I just loved it. And it goes to the point of, if you like to do it, if you're interested in something, that is not like work.
So you never let the whole, I'm a woman, this is a male dominated thing, really kind of get in your way. Like, you just kind of said, I'm just going to treat myself like I'm a human. And my gender isn't going to be a limiting factor for me? Or what was your mindset around that? Because I know so many women who struggle with trying to figure out ways to get into stuff because they see it as a male dominated thing, and they see themselves as women, and that gets stuck in their head. Just like for Black people, as a Black man, like, I know a lot of Black folks who are like, oh my God, golf. I have one of my best friends from high school. He's an avid golfer. And I remember him trying to convince me to become an avid golfer. And I was like, golfing, that's really white people's sport. Like, that's not something that we do, Not that I did the Black people stuff either, because I didn't want to play basketball. I played tennis. So clearly it was a ridiculous argument on my part. But at least at that point, I had Arthur Ashe. There wasn't no Tiger Woods when we were having this conversation. Tiger Woods might have been in diapers, I think. There are people that have this stuff in their head that this isn't for me because what I see doesn't look like me. It's a whole lot of conversation we have in communities of color about needing to see people that look like us. But you didn't need that. Like, you were able to just kind of chart your way through. I'm just wondering, like, what your advice would be for women who are looking for an example and can't find one, but nonetheless want to do it.
Yeah, I think you really have to work on your mindset. I mean, if you really want something badly enough, don't let your own biases kick in. Get rid of them, write it down, flush it out, and give yourself that confidence list that says, okay, this is why I want to do this, and here's the reasons why. And I'm not going to let my gender stop me. I'm going to keep pursuing this because I feel like this is where I need to be. And trust me, there are lots of, and you know this because you said it, there are a lot of male dominated industries. For example, I speak a lot in the mining industry, and there are brilliant female chemists and CEOs and, you know, at other levels that would be perfect in the mining industry, but they don't go into it, engineers, because they feel like, oh, it's too male dominated. I'll be left out of the conversation. I'm going to be the only, which sometimes they are. So you have to be brave to be able to do that, but the rewards are incredible. I did a speech, I did a leadership day for a company, thanks to my friend Susan Gatton, called La Hoist, and they're a huge mining company, and they're in Belgium, and they've got people all over the world, and only like 7% of their workforce is female, but there's all these badass females that would be incredible to work for them, and they're encouraging that. But it's intimidating for a lot of women to go into that field, but, you know, brave it. I think if you can brave it and have the courage to do that, it's the best, because then you reap the rewards. And it's just a question of having the confidence to be around men. And men like confident women, and I think if you're confident, they will back you up. And there'll always be some guy that was,
loves them.
Exactly. There always would be, as much as there might be detractors for me when I've done it, and always there has been, there would always be some men or a man that would back me up, and because they saw that I was confident, I knew what I was doing, I knew the questions to ask, I knew how to perform and put on a show that was interesting. So I would cultivate those relationships, and just don't worry about the critics. The more you can shut out the critics, the more confidence you can build in anything in life, but particularly for somebody trying to go into a space where they don't see people like themselves, the better off you'll be, and the easier time you'll have adjusting to that once you get there.
Yeah, I think like sometimes, because I remember like at points in my career having to make that decision, and you know, for me, it's always been compelling to want to be the first. For some people, I don't know, you know, it just, they don't want to be the first. But for me, I'm always like, okay, I get to be the first, you know? So when I was coming out of law school, the firm I went to out of law school was known as not a very diverse firm. It was a very successful firm, it was a very profitable firm. It had a lot of great things, Kirkland & Ellis, but it was not known as the place that you went to if you were a minority or a woman. It was not known for that. They did not have anything great to say in that regard. And then there was another firm in Chicago, Winston & Strawn, that had this huge cadre of minority associates. They had like all these videos and like all these awards and all that stuff. And everybody was like, oh, Winston's the place to go. They're all similarly situated in terms of Chicago law firms. And you should go to Winston. Everybody said, well, you know, why would you take a chance? I said, well, yeah, but if I go there, then how do these other places ever get to be better? You know, like, how do they, you know, you kind of self-perpetuate the problem. If everybody says we're going to go here and nobody actually says we're going to go there, then here gets better and there gets worse, but we want the whole profession to get better, right? So I was like, well, I guess I'm just going to be one of the first to go over there. So I rolled my butt over there. And, you know, and it did. It changed in a lot of ways. It never got to the point where I think I'd say it was excellent, but, you know, it got a whole lot better over the course of my career. And, you know, for me, it was compelling. It was like, to them, it was like an easy slam dunk argument. And I was like, that's not compelling to me to go get in the pot with everybody else doing what everybody else is doing. What's compelling to me is getting this pot and be the first, or one of the first, or be somebody that's charting new territory. So I think what you're speaking to is really just that willingness, that grit, determination to say, you know what, if I have to be the first to do this, I'm gonna go do this. I'd rather be the first than be the last, you know?
Boy, I agree with that. And that's part of it. I mean, you have to be willing to do that, and you'll reap the rewards I think you reap the rewards if you do that. But a lot of people, I call them detractors, even people you love, want to see you in a better situation. Like, oh, Jamal, why would you do that? Roll over to Winston. Why are you going to Kirkland & Ellis? Are you kidding me, dude? You would make a ton at the other place. And I heard the same things. You'd be a great lawyer. You'd be a great investment banker. Why are you banging your head against the wall? So I call them raving fans. You want to cultivate the raving fans who are backing you in taking the leap. And then once you do it, and then you're successful, then everybody says, well, yeah, I thought that would happen. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. All right. So I have 3 things that I like to ask. I've gotten better at this as this goes, and I'd love to hear your answers. So here's what they are. I want to know how you're coping with this crazy coronavirus, because this whole thing was birthed out of a desire for me to create some level of connection while we're in this quarantine, shelter in place mode. It was supposed to be lunch, supposed to be virtual lunch. Most times I'm the only one having lunch because I do smoothies for lunch because I'm trying to watch my weight and stay fit since I'm not exercising. But I want to know how you're coping, whatever you're doing, what your coping skills look like. I know you got a hubby and everything else. You got some fur babies. You got all kinds of stuff that I know you've got to be taken care of in your home life. So how are you coping? How are you growing? And then how are you going to carry whatever you've learned from this experience forward?
They're great questions. So coping, I'm staying connected to people, family, friends, and business through virtual. I did Zoom before Zoom was popular. I used to tell people zip to Zoom, especially engineers, that you could see people face to face. So for me to do virtual, it wasn't a big leap. I was already doing it. The biggest leap was being able to get people around me in my personal life to go to Zoom so I could see their face, my family, my brother, my nephew, my aunts, you know, my cousins in New Jersey and Philly and Florida and all over. And that's been good because everybody is kind of reluctant. At first they were reluctant, and then they suddenly are lingering forever, where I have to cut the cord or we're going to be on for 5 hours. So it's crazy. And then they show you what they're doing and there's like a different sense of what's normal, but I feel connected since we're isolated. And you mentioned fur babies. So we adopted a foster puppy who is mostly golden retriever, and he's been great. His name is Guinness. And he's a little hellion in one way, so he just keeps me going. And because I'm like
a summer dog.
Yes.
Have you heard that saying? I have a friend that calls them, used to call them mutts, and she calls them summer dogs. Some of this, some of that.
He's a sum of you know what. But what's really good, and it helps me cope, is that I walk them twice a day. So I'm usually doing about 5 miles a day because I'm concerned about staying in shape too, especially because I'm not out and about as much as I was. And plus it helps my mind. If I'm working so much or trying to create, it helps the creative juices. And so I love doing that. I like to cook, and I've been cooking meals and just focusing on the positive and getting out for walks and whatever, so that I'm not completely in the house. Because I don't care what your crib is like. I don't care if it's 6,000 square feet or 2,000, or you live in a box in a giant city. You need some fresh air. You need to get out there somehow and take a little break for your mind as well. So that's how I'm really, really coping. And then during this time period, the thing that I've done is I've upped my game on what I need to learn. So I've gone to XYZ conference, I spoke at a conference, and I listened to other speakers, and they gave me their book, and it's really fantastic, but of course I never had time to read it. Other people have sent me some interesting things that I never had time to delve into, workbooks or whatever. And I try to take, I'll do a novel, so to relax, and then I'll do a business book or something along the business lines, a course or whatever it is that I didn't have time for, that I shoved in a drawer somewhere. And I guarantee, for everybody listening, I guarantee you have something you shoved in a drawer. And it could be
Absolutely.
It could be business, but it could be, something else. Like I wanted to learn the ukulele. So I have this ukulele. I took a few lessons, and then it ended up in my closet. So now pull it out if I want to, and then start to work on that. And I think taking that forward is trying to implement some of what I've learned, because I'm a learnaholic, as one of my friends calls it, being a learnaholic. And because I'm a learnaholic now, being able to apply that as I move forward, and we move forward with the pandemic, because who knows if you have a second wave or what happens, and trying to implement some of what I've taught myself, some of what I've learned from other people, some of what I've went back to look at, whether it's technical aspects or upping my virtual game more, or whatever it is that I think I don't think that I know I want to apply, because I see it working. and reinventing myself somewhat. And I think that's key, that growth. I like to say this, that there is an ocean of time between Monday and Friday. That's how it used to be. People would get to like Tuesday or Wednesday, like, forget it, this week's done. I can't do that. No, we've got an ocean of time, and it'd be a shame to waste that ocean of time. Even if you focused on two things, whatever it is, and then we get out of this and things will be different, and you apply whatever it was you learned, imagine how much better off you'll be connected wise, which is a great time to connect to people, and also business wise, how much better off you can be. I think it's that mindset. What do you want to attract versus what do you not want to attract? People always go to, I don't want this to happen. Go to what you want to happen.
Well, I love that you said that, because, one of the things I loved about our academy experience, because going into this, particularly when you talk about coaching CEOs, there's this predisposition toward empirical data, the hard stuff, the numbers and the metrics and all that kind of stuff. And there's a little bit of a shunning of some of the softer stuff, vulnerability, feelings, and whatever. And I remember, as in all of my years of coaching and working like in the professional space, those kind of things were always pushed off to the side. Like, I don't want to talk about your feelings. I don't want to, talk about vulnerability. I don't want to talk about anything metaphysical or spiritual either, because I don't want to offend anybody or hurt anybody's feelings or make people think I'm woo-woo out there or whatever. And then as we have been building our Vistage practices and even the academy experience we went through, we brought them together. I very much believe in, letting people tap into their feelings. I don't care how senior you are. I don't care how big your business is. You're still a human being. You still bleed. You still have feelings. You still get hurt. You still go home and probably cry, whether you want to admit it or not. When things don't go well, you go complain and moan to your wife or your husband, partner, whomever. You still are human. And those soft feelings and aspects and the metaphysical stuff still applies to you. So like the whole idea of the law of attraction, people want, oh, you can't prove that. Yeah, I can, I can, absolutely. You get what you think about, you get what you focus on, whether it's good or bad. And classic example I can think of many times, the number of times I've walked around with something delicate, and you know how you put something delicate in your hand, you're like, I don't want to drop this, and you're walking extra. And 9 times out of 10, when you do that, that's the one time where something strange happens and you're like, dang, the very thing I was trying not to break, I break. Because you're so busy focused on not breaking it that something distracts you from a pebble on the floor or a loud noise. You break it. But when you just kind of like say, you know what, this is great, I'm good, and you kind of do what you got to do, 9 out of 10, nothing ever happens. People, you're focused on the positive, you get more of the positive. When you focus on the negative, you get more of the negative. And people sometimes think, oh my God, I want to focus on eliminating this. I want to unfriend these people. I want to eliminate this out of my life. I want to get out of debt. I want to da-da-da-da. I'm like, you're focusing so much on what you don't want that all you're going to do is get more of it. Instead of being like, you know what? Yes, I want to get out of debt. Actually, I want to be a millionaire or a billionaire. So I'm going to start this new business so I can have this whole extra line of income. And I'm going to really focus on that. Well, if you focus on that a whole lot, that will work, that will grow. And by definition, this whole debt problem without you ever even thinking about it will go away, because if you got more money, you can pay off your bills. But you spend all that time focusing on the negative stuff, you just attract more of it to you. So I am glad you brought that up. Yeah,
I agree with you. Deepak Chopra says, I am what I attract. And just think about that. I am what I attract. And it's very easy to go, and you gave a great example of debt. I mean, of course, who wants to be in debt? But you focus so much on it, it gets you stuck. You're not thinking of what you could be doing to be earning that money that would pay that debt off.
And that's an even better illustration, because again, you only have so much time. You only have so much energy to focus. If all your focus is on getting out of debt, when do you have time to focus on actually making the money you need to get out of the debt? Like, there's no job called get out of debt. There's nobody going to pay you to get out of your debt. Like, you got to create some value. You got to do something that people are going to pay you for. And then if you do that, a lot of that, you get a lot of money, and then the debt thing has to go away by definition. So
yeah,
I think that's one thing has become even more clear to me in this whole quarantine shelter in place experience, because you do have a lot of time to focus on the wrong stuff, because you ain't going nowhere for anytime soon. I'm like, negative thoughts, negative things. I'm like, I'm just gonna act like you're not here. Even wondering about when this is gonna be over. I'm like, if I get up every week saying, when is the last week of this gonna come? I'm just inviting more weeks of being stuck. So I'm just sitting there thinking every day about, man, when this is over, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go there. I'm going to see this person. I'm driving up to Dallas to go get drinks with Kate. I'm going to
Yay.
Houston to go have drinks with Haley. Like, I have all these, I'm thinking about the stuff that I want and not about getting up every day being mad about the fact that I'm stuck in my house, because, I could sit there and obsess over that. And that's just going to make, either you're going to burn yourself out being miserable, or you're going to get more of what you want. Either way, you're going to be unhappy.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm glad you brought that up about what the situation that we're in now, because if more people think that way, then whenever it happens, just imagine how great it'll be, because in your mind, you've already designed what you want to see, who you want to see, and it'll be fantastic.
Right. And it'll come a whole lot faster and a whole lot easier. And even the sucky times, the depressed time goes, as they say, time flies when you're having fun. If you're having fun making plans for your future, this little negative experience will go by a whole lot faster than if you're sitting there thinking, when is this going to be over? I hate my house. I hate being stuck here. This is that's just misery.
I agree.
Well, listen, my friend, it was really great to see you. And it's really great to catch up, and we're gonna have to do this again soon. And I mean that, like, when this is over, I'm coming up to Dallas. We're gonna have a little happy hour or something. We're gonna have to do something, because that was one of the things I was looking forward to when we got out of the academy, coming back, like, okay, now I have all these cool people in Texas that will give me excuses to go to these other places in Texas that I like to go. And then, we walk out of academy. I still believe, I said this to Haley, I was like, I think I walked out of there with coronavirus. I left with the coronavirus. It was the first wave. I think half of us went home really, really sick.
Yeah.
And then once I got better, it's like, oh, well, so much for that plan, but I'm not letting it go. So I will be up there as soon as they allow us to get out and go to some bars, and we can do that safely, because I definitely want to catch up with you in person.
Yeah, count on it. I love it. I can't wait.
All right. Well, it's good seeing you. I'm going to post this video and tell people a little bit more about you later on today, and I look forward to seeing you again real soon.
Thank you.
All right. Take care of yourself, Kate.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.